Good evening and welcome to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Erin Johnson.
And I'm Taylor Brennan. This week we saw a ton of action in the sports world. College football fans are anxiously awaiting this week's rankings following some major upsets this past weekend. The official rankings will be released tomorrow night on ESPN.
Switching to Major League Baseball, the Astros beat the Dodgers in a walk-off single and extra innings on Sunday night. The Astros lead the series 3-2, and Game 6 returns to Los Angeles on Tuesday.
Sunday was a devastating day for Chicago Bears tight end Zach Miller. After Sunday's loss to the Saints, Miller severely dislocated his knee, landing him in emergency surgery with the possibility to lose his leg altogether. Luckily, the surgery was successful and amputation was not necessary.
On a brighter note, Texans rookie quarterback Deshaun Watson threw 4 touchdown passes on Sunday night against the Seattle Seahawks. Watson now has 3 games with 4 passing touchdowns. That will do it for us, but stay tuned for our college football segment here on Penn State Sports Night.
Hi, and welcome to our college football segment on Penn State Sports Night. Joined by Austin Smith, Jack Hirsch, I'm Matt Freiler. Penn State and TCU both fell from the ranks of the unbeaten Saturday, and now just 4 undefeated Power 5 schools remain. At the time of this filming, the first set of college football playoff rankings are not yet released, but they are sure to reveal a thing or two about the committee's logic this season. So how about your guys' logic? Let's go to your top 4, Jack. Who do you got?
Okay, so let me first explain that my top 4 is what I think are the best teams in the country, not what I think the committee will do. So I have Alabama at number 1. I don't think a lot of people are going to disagree with that. Now I have Georgia at number 2. They've played really well. They're one of 5 undefeateds left in the FBS, as you said. And now I have Ohio State at number 3. And a lot of people are going to get upset with that, obviously, because we're at Penn State. And Ohio State obviously just beat Penn State. But you know what? I think that's the best win in college football right now was number 6, Ohio State last week, taking down number 2, Penn State. So that's why I have the Buckeyes in 3 as the highest ranked one-loss team. Number 4 is Notre Dame, who I think is arguably the hottest team in college football right now. They have won 6 straight since they lost to Georgia, which is probably Georgia's win over Notre Dame was probably the second best win in college football. Then I have Wisconsin as the first one out. I think a lot of people are concerned. The Badgers really haven't played anybody, and that's true. They really haven't played any good teams. They've got this kid, Jonathan Taylor. He's leading the all freshmen in rushing, more than J.K. Dobbins of Ohio State. Really good player. So I really like the Badgers. The offensive line is the same as last year. So they've got a good chance. And then I have Penn State at number 6 as the next best one-loss team. I just think some of their wins over Michigan and Iowa, yes, they're not ranked teams anymore. Obviously, Michigan was ranked when they played them. I think that's, and obviously their loss is the best loss in college football, and I think that's better than, say, Clemson's loss to Syracuse. But Austin, I know you have the same top 4, just in a little different order, and then you have a different 5. Would you like to show us?
Oh, yeah, of course. So I agree. Definitely number 1, Alabama, unquestionably the top team. They haven't maybe played the best teams like other teams have, but players like Calvin Ridley, Jalen Hurts, that defense, you can't ever go wrong with the Nick Saban-led team. So now second, I have a little different. I have Ohio State, just because I think they probably do have the best win this season, whereas Georgia hasn't really beaten a team besides Notre Dame that they have a few weeks back. Then, like I said, Georgia's number 3, Jacob Fromm. That running back committee is outstanding. They're undefeated. They definitely have the capability to jump Ohio State. It's just a matter of how they finish off the season. Then at number 4, Notre Dame. Their quarterback, Winbush, has been extremely productive. Josh Adams has been a Heisman candidate. And the only difference out of the first 2 out, I would say, would be Clemson instead of, you said, Wisconsin. Just because I don't think Wisconsin has necessarily played anybody great, and Clemson's only loss to Syracuse was without their starting quarterback, Kelly Bryant. And lastly, Penn State, like you said, one of the best one-loss teams in the nation right now. Lost a squeaker, 1-point loss to Ohio State. Definitely have the capability to jump out back into those top 4 if Ohio State is to lose to somebody like Iowa or someone later in the season.
So right now you both have Penn State at number 6. Let's take a second to revisit Penn State's possible playoff hopes. So you have one side saying, okay, Ohio State should lose somewhere in order for Penn State to make a playoff run. You have another side saying Ohio State should win out, dominate everybody, win that Big Ten championship game so that the Nittany Lions can get in with them. So my question for both of you guys, can Penn State get in with Ohio State, or does it have to be over the Buckeyes?
No, I think Penn State can totally get in with Ohio State. If you look, Ohio State is in the driver's seat of the Big Ten. And if they win the Big Ten, I think it'll be hard not to take them. So what happens if, let's say, Ohio State goes to Kinnick this coming weekend, plays Iowa, who is as tough as anybody in their house, and loses to Kinnick because they're doing a blackout, 3:30 game. We know that stadium's raucous. It's going to be loud. It's going to be really tough for the Buckeyes. So a loss would be, I wouldn't say it's understandable, but it could happen. So I think if they still lose, they're still going to beat Michigan because I really don't think Michigan's very good. Obviously, Penn State showed that. And, I mean, Michigan hasn't really played anybody and beaten anybody this year. Obviously, just like Penn State. But I don't think Michigan is going to beat Ohio State. So I think the Buckeyes will get to that Big Ten championship. And if it's against Wisconsin, I mean, we don't know how good Wisconsin is, obviously. But I think if they win that, it'll be hard to take them, even if they're a two-loss team. Now, the interesting thing with Penn State is I think they will win out. So they'll be a non-conference champion. Who was a one-loss non-conference champion that was able to make it to the playoff last year? It was the Buckeyes. So I think there's a good chance of Penn State getting in this if both teams will win out, and probably Notre Dame or Georgia would have to lose.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely possible that Ohio State and Penn State could both get in, but I think the most likely situation is an Ohio State loss, like you said, at Kinnick Stadium or on the road against the Wolverines, Michigan. Now, obviously, Michigan isn't a team like that used to be, like last season when they had players like Jabril Peppers. They weren't as banged up offensively, but their quarterback, Brandon Peters, has actually played pretty well against Rutgers, given it's only one game and it is Rutgers. But he's definitely performed better than John O'Corn has, even through just one game. So I definitely think that Penn State could definitely hop into that playoff if Ohio State decides to slip up.
All right, so with the playoff discussion covered a little bit, let's talk about the Heisman race. So you have Saquon Barkley return to kick for a touchdown on the opening kick. On the other hand, you have J.T. Barrett, who has been playing out of his mind lately. So Austin, we'll start with you first. What are your thoughts on J.T. Barrett's chances to win the Heisman?
Yeah, so I thought that J.T. Barrett, he did struggle early on in the season against Oklahoma, and many people really did write him off. But after his insane performance against Penn State this season, he was 33 of 39, over 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. He spread the ball around to everybody, and he really just did look like the best player on that field last Saturday. So obviously, I don't think he has necessarily overtaken Saquon Barkley as the Heisman favorite, but he's definitely in that top 2 or 3.
Yeah, and another person I'd like to add to the mix is Josh Adams of Notre Dame. Obviously, electric running back. He's had 670 yards in the past 4 games with 6 touchdowns. So he's a big reason why the Irish are the hottest team in college football. Saquon Barkley has been just about kind of not even average. You take away 3 big runs in the past couple years, and I got to thank Mike Poorman for the stat, he's averaging just 1.9 yards a carry. So he hasn't performed as of late, especially when the season got into crunch time, but we'll see how he finishes this last season, these last 4 games off, because he's clearly the favorite, especially because Bryce Love of Stanford didn't play this past weekend.
So Saquon Barkley will continue his Heisman campaign as Penn State visits Michigan State on Saturday. It's a noon kick. So Penn State fans should also keep their eyes on several games around the country this weekend, including Clemson-NC State, Virginia Tech-Miami, and the battle for Bedlam between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. That'll wrap up our college football segment. For Jack Hirsch and Austin Smith, I'm Matt Freiler. Next up, we have DJ Bauer and Jason Marcus with our NFL midseason analysis.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Jason Marcus alongside DJ Bauer, and tonight we're going to be talking about everything NFL Week 8 related. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. DJ, one of the biggest highlights from this week, of course, was that Texans-Seahawks game. Extremely high scoring. Both Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson threw for 4 touchdowns and over 400 yards. And after this game, a lot of people around the NFL are talking about Deshaun Watson as a possible Rookie of the Year. Do you think he has it locked up, or do you think someone else could be competing for that role?
I think Deshaun Watson is a very good pick. He has done some great things for the Texans so far this year. But from what I'm seeing, I think that Kareem Hunt is the guy that you have to go with. He has been an absolute monster for the Chiefs since the first game of the season. 100-plus yards from scrimmage every game this year. That's unheard of for a rookie. We're talking about stats that haven't been achieved since Eric Dickerson back in 1983. I think Kareem Hunt is the front runner right now, but there are definitely other possibilities. You mentioned Watson. I think that Leonard Fournette is doing a great job in Jacksonville. He's definitely in consideration. As for the defensive side of the ball, it might be a little bit more difficult to win that Rookie of the Year. But T.J. Watt has been excellent for the Steelers. You have to talk about Marshawn Lattimore and what he's done for New Orleans.
Absolutely.
So it's not a closed conversation yet. It's definitely still wide open.
Yeah, absolutely. But Watson is, of course, making his case. He's got 19 touchdowns. He's tied with Carson Wentz for the league lead in touchdowns. And he actually just broke the record for most touchdown passes in his first 7 starts of his career, including surpassing greats like Peyton Manning and Brett Favre. So, of course, as he continues around the season, we'll see if Deshaun Watson can lead his Texans to a division title and possibly a playoff berth. Also going on in the NFL this week, obviously it's the mid-season point. Trades are all starting to happen. We've seen a couple shake out so far. We saw Dwayne Brown get traded from the Houston Texans to the Seattle Seahawks, help to shore up that offensive line. Also, just recently, in breaking news, we saw that the Patriots sent quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo to the San Francisco 49ers for a second-round pick. DJ, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Well, I think it's definitely a big move for the Niners. They're trying to find a quarterback for the season. Obviously, Brian Hoyer has not panned out well. C.J. Beathard has not panned out well either. He did get pretty beat up against Philadelphia in that huge loss. So they're looking for a quarterback, and they think Garoppolo might be the guy. So depending on how Garoppolo plays the rest of the season, I think it's a possibility that 49ers take out of their considerations for a quarterback in the draft. So Saquon Barkley to the 49ers, what do you think about that?
I think that's spot on. I think if Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, he's going to have a chance to play well for at least half a season. If he can prove that he's the quarterback of the future and you have that position locked up, I don't see why you wouldn't take Saquon Barkley, who's a generational talent, in the first round, if, of course, they have a top 5 pick, which at this point it looks like there's a pretty good chance they would have. You mentioned the Eagles, arguably the best team in football. They have the best record. Who do you think is the most competitive to them in the NFC?
Well, my pick for that is Minnesota. There are plenty of good teams that can compete with the Eagles, but I think that the Vikings are the best. They're 6-2. They're second in the NFC right now. They're coming off of a 4-game win streak. Even without Dalvin Cook and that ACL injury, they're still winning games. Both the offense and the defense are stepping up. You look at guys like Everson Griffin has pressured the quarterback more times than any player this year. Xavier Rhodes has been the example of a shutdown corner. And even on the offense, Case Keenum, no one was expecting him to step up and be as good as he has, but he has really taken the leap here. And that brings into in consideration here, Teddy Bridgewater is going to be coming back. So now we have a quarterback controversy in Minnesota. Who do you go with? You have 3 healthy guys with Keenum, Sam Bradford, and Bridgewater. I think you stick with Keenum. You stick with the guy who's got the hot hand. He's been playing well for Minnesota. And if he doesn't pan out, you still have a healthy option with Bradford. And you allow Bridgewater to ease back into that position instead of thrusting him right back into it. So it's a more calm progression for Bridgewater back into the NFL. And they've got a real test coming up here. They have the Redskins, Rams, and Lions, all 3 decent teams in November after their bye week. So we will see if this Vikings team can stand up to the Eagles.
I agree with you. I think you keep going with Case Keenum. He's got the hot hand, like you said. If you're looking at trades that we just talked about, Sam Bradford might be one of those quarterbacks who's on the trade block now, that he's probably the 3rd quarterback on that depth chart, but still a quality quarterback in this league, in which, of course, quarterbacks is such a highly coveted position. So look for him to be on the move sometime soon, especially with Teddy Bridgewater coming back. But you mentioned the Vikings to be the biggest threat in the NFC to the Eagles. I'm going to have to go with the Seattle Seahawks here. Now, I know last week we talked about how their defense is still good, but it's not the same as it was from a couple years ago. Last week, Dylan was talking about how their offense was looking anemic. Obviously, this week, they kind of proved that they can keep it going when they want to. Russell Wilson had a great day. I think if they can keep going on this pace and Russell Wilson can play like he did last Sunday, keep racking up wins, they've got experience in the playoffs, and for the Eagles fans, that's got to be scary because you know how hard it is to win in the playoffs against Seattle, especially if the game is at home for the Seahawks. So, obviously, a lot of teams have been shining this year, but there's also been a couple disappointments. Who stands out to you as a team that isn't living up to the hype?
I have to go with the Denver Broncos. They started off 3-1. After week 4, they looked like they were going to be contenders this year. They fall into 3-3. I just don't understand how you can destroy Dallas like they did in week 2 and then lose 2 straight games to 2 teams that started 0-4. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Trevor Siemian looked like he was going to be the guy, and he's just completely fallen off. He got pretty banged up against New York, and that showed in San Diego, or rather Los Angeles, because they did not score any points. I mean, I just don't understand it. How can you have guys on the defense like Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, possibly the best cornerback duo in the NFL, and they lose to a team that has no starting receivers? Denver has been completely disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. I have to go with another AFC West team, going with the Raiders here. Obviously, there was a high hopes from the last year, especially coming this year. You're getting a healthy Derek Carr, but Derek Carr's having more injury issues, and they're just not looking like the team that everyone thought they would be. Real quick, if you had to give me a team that surprised you the most this year, who would you pick?
I'm going to pick the New Orleans Saints. They started off 5-2. Not a lot of people were expecting that. The thing you have to look at here is the defense. They have stepped up so much because in past years we've talked about how this Saints defense has been absolutely terrible, and they have made the leap this year. Guys like we talked about, Marshawn Lattimore and Cameron Jordan, have been absolute playmakers for New Orleans. They've been dominant. Drew Brees and the offense have been as good as ever. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep pace in that tight NFC South division with the Panthers and the Falcons going on from here.
I agree with that 100%. My pick personally is Jacksonville with that incredible defense, and they just added Marcel Darius this week in a trade with Buffalo, so they're going to even get even better. I think if they can get an established quarterback, they can go be really good for a long time. All right, well, that'll be it for this week's segment on the NFL. I'm Jason Marcus and DJ Bauer. Now let's send it over to Josh Starr and Jeff with MLB Baseball.
Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Jeffrey Morgan here with Josh Starr, who will be giving us a rundown on the World Series so far. Josh, what have we seen?
Well, so far it's been a hard-fought series, back and forth, great pitching on both sides, really. Mm-hmm. The first 4 games split evenly. As I said, great pitching, low scoring. Game 5, totally different story, 13-12 in 10 innings. The Astros coming out on top who would have thought a game started by Kershaw and Keuchel would be 13-12 and go that long? It's just a lot of that game was an instant classic in my mind. A lot of home runs. Altuve being the MVP that he is, and giving the Astros that 3-2 lead.
Definitely one for the record books. So what do the Astros have to do to close out the series in LA?
Well, I really think it's all about their bullpen. Their closer, or at least their closer throughout the whole season, Ken Giles, was not used by A.J. Hinch in Game 5, and I don't know how much confidence he has in him. And the rest of their bullpen is gassed. Brad Peacock throwing a lot of pitches in back-to-back games. So it'll be interesting to see going forward in the last game or maybe 2 how the Astros utilize their bullpen.
And moving over to the Dodgers, what do you see for them if they want to make a comeback in this series?
Well, I really don't think they have to change much. I mean, they've been in all these games. It's been really close. A bad bounce or just one big hit by the Astros, and the Dodgers lost. But the one thing, it's really unlike Kenley Jansen to blow 2 games in this series. I don't think it'll happen again. And I think that Dodgers will definitely, their offense will be fine. They'll be in these games. They'll have a chance to win. And Kenley Jansen, I don't think will blow it again. So, if he gets his chance, I think he'll put it away, and it'll be a win for the Dodgers.
So you think the Dodgers end up winning the World Series?
I do. I do think they come back and win this thing. They're coming home for Game 6, backs against the wall, home crowd. I don't see any way they lose Game 6. And then Game 7, anything can happen. They're home. I like to give them the advantage in that game. As I said, Kenley Jansen, a stud out of the bullpen. Their offense is so good. And Astros coming off this high from Game 5, there might be a letdown. So we'll see how it plays out, but I'm going to go with the Dodgers.
All right. That will be it for us at Penn State Sports Night. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, and we'll be back next week with another edition. Thank you.